Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much everyone for coming on my YouTube channel Think Big Learn Smart. Please like, comment, share and subscribe as it helps and motivates me to make more videos like this. Without further ado, let's start our discussion about our today's topic. And our today's topic is conflict theory. We will discuss about its following things in our upcoming slides. We will discuss its brief introduction, core assumptions behind conflict theory. We will also discuss few practical examples of conflict theory in our society, its strengths, and we will discuss few criticisms that are leveled against this conflict theory. So let's move on with our lecture. Introduction. In this slide, we will discuss briefly about the concept of conflict theory. So let's move on. A conflict theory, most commonly associated with Karl Marx. Well, here is this man, Karl Marx, a very famous sociologist, economist, political scientist, and philosopher. So conflict theory looks at the society from a macro level approach. What does we mean by macro level approach? It means it looks at the society from a larger scale. And conflict theory says is that society is in competition for limited resources. There is a class conflict going on, and Karl Marx recognized these classes that are in conflict as bourgeoisie, the owners or the means of production, and the proletariat, the working class and the poor. So what does he say is that according to the class conflict theory, those with wealth and power try to hold on to it by any means possible, and there is a conflict that is going on, and they chiefly suppress the poor and the powerless for gaining the access of those limited resources. That is the main premise of the conflict theory, and it basically focuses on the causes, the reasons behind this conflict, and the consequences, what are the end result of this class conflict. And according to the conflict theory, that conflict is driving the change in the society. It is the main force that drives change in a society. So that was about the brief concept of conflict theory. So let's move on. In this slide, we are going to discuss about the core assumptions of conflict theory. And one of the most important assumptions of conflict theory is that competition is a constant in every human relationship or an interaction, as society is made up of human beings. So that's why this also reflects in the structure and working of a society. The second assumption of a conflict theory is that the final outcome of this class conflict will be a revolution. And the third assumption of conflict theory is that inequality of power is inherent in a society. There will always be few people who will gain more power and reward than the others. Then it also talks about the war, which it says is that this cumulative growing of the conflict between individuals or group is what causes the war in a society. So these were the four core assumptions of conflict theory. Now let's move on with the practical examples of conflict theory. One of the first examples we are going to discuss here is the Me Too movement. Well, Me Too movement is the example of a revolution that Karl Marx and Weber predicted in their works, that the class conflict will inevitably lead towards the revolution. Now let's discuss the Me Too movement. Well, the term Me Too was coined in 2006 by a black activist, Tarana Burki, who sought attention for the women who are sexually assaulted. But this term gained momentum in 2017 in the social media when a famous actress leveled accusations against a producer who tried to sexually assault her or sexually harass her, I would say. I would not go in the details of that account, But let's try to analyze this example in terms of conflict theory. So what conflict theory talks about, that there are two classes. One is a rich class, the bourgeoisie, and then there is the other proletariat, the working class, the poor people. So the rich class or the ruling class uses its power to abuse its subordinates, in which the man and the woman both are present. So when the conflict rises to a certain level, the revolution occurs, and the Me Too movement was that revolution that occurred by that conflict, as it was predicted by Karl Marx and Weber in their writing about the conflict theory. So that's all about Me Too movement. Now let's move on towards the other example. Another example of conflict theory is the revolution of Black Lives Matter. Well, that revolution started in 2013 after George Zimmerman was acquitted in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. Well, what happened was that Zimmerman shot Martin, a black American, who was unarmed during physical altercation between the two. Well, Zimmerman was acquitted on the basis of self-defense in the confrontation, but the movement supporters started to demonstrate that there is a certain bias against black people in America, and the black people are not treated equally in the American society. There is this upper class, the white American class, and there is the lower American class, the black American people. So this Black Lives Matter revolution started to give equal rights to the black people, and that their lives also matter in this system. So Black Lives Matter is another example of social revolution after years of unequal treatment that is going on from the start of American state creation. So that is a revolution of this class conflict between these two black and white classes. Other examples of conflict theory are deviance in crime and poverty. So poverty is deliberately enacted in society by the wealthy rich people who wants to hold on to their power by using these laws in favor of their economic interests. Thus the poverty is spreading in the society. So how the suppressed class overcome this poverty? They use crime and deviance for their support, for gaining an edge in this conflict. So that conflict is going on between the powerful and the powerless, the haves and the have-nots. So that is all about the examples of conflict theory. Now let's move on towards the strengths of conflict theory. Stability dilemma. With the premise of continuous struggle or conflict between classes, it completely excludes the stable economies and societies, and that is one of the major criticisms against conflict theory. It does not include or explain the stable societies. There is no concept of stability in conflict theory. Then another criticism against conflict theory is that it has a limited perspective of looking at the society. It does not work at the macroeconomic scale, including family systems. It looks at the macro level changes in the society. Then another criticism against this conflict theory is that it excludes peaceful change. As Marx predicted that revolution is inevitable in the class conflict, there is no concept of peaceful change. But here in the society, we observe this peaceful change in terms of educational advancements, sports careers, career promotion. These are the peaceful change revolutions. So there is no concept of this in the conflict theory. That was all about conflict theory. Thank you very much for your time. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. Allah Hafiz. Bye bye.